Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to continue talking about factoring x squared plus bx plus c, a trinomial where the coefficient of x squared is 1. But remember, in the last lesson, we factored trinomials where c, this constant, was positive. And in this lesson, we're going to look at examples where c is negative. So we're going to talk about signs and all that within the factors. Okay, so for example, let's look at this one. So let's say we want to factor x squared minus 3x minus 18. So x squared minus 3x minus 18. Again, we're going to use the idea of FOIL, and we're going to use the idea of product sum. So I'm going to use those two ideas to help us to factor this, just like in the last section. All right, so first of all, what you want to do is find the GCF. So is there a GCF other than 1? And so here the GCF is 1, so I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. And so in terms of FOIL, remember you want to say what factor times what factor, what term here, what term times what term will give us x squared. So give me two factors multiplied together that will give me x squared. So you can say x times x. All right, now that takes care of that. Now in terms of the last, you go to last next. That's negative 18. So you want two numbers, you want two factors of 18. So two terms right here that will give us a product of negative 18. So remember, we want the product to be negative 18, your constant, that's C, and you want the sum, and so when you add up the outer and the inner, so you always got to check this, that's the idea of that FOIL. When you add the outer and the inner, you want to get a negative 3. So you want the sum to be, in this case, negative 3. Make sure you correctly state the coefficient. The coefficient of x is not 3. The coefficient of x is negative 3. So remember, so you want the product to be C, and you want the sum to be B, the coefficient of x. All right, so you can just think of some possibilities for 18, like 6 and, well, let's do 9 and 2 first. 9 and 2. Now remember, you want the product to be negative. That means that one of these signs is negative and one of these signs is positive. They can't both be the same sign, because a positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. All right, so you need one sign to be positive and one sign to be negative. Now remember, you want the sum to be negative, so that means that the larger of these absolute values here, so the absolute value of 9 is 9, the absolute value of 2 is 2, so the larger of those will take that middle sign. So if you make a mistake, like let's say you say positive 9, negative 2. So positive 9 times negative 2 will give us negative 18, but when I look at the sum, I get a positive 7. All right, so you get a positive number, so you need a negative. So that's why the larger of those would be negative. All right, so 9 and negative 2 obviously didn't work. So let's try 6 and 3. So 6 times 3 is 18. I want a negative 18. I also want the sum to be negative. I want the outer and the inner to add up to be negative. In order for that to happen, the larger of these right here, the larger absolute value, must be negative. So that means that the 6 must be a negative 6. And always check yourself. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. When you add them up, you do get negative 3. So these are the ones I'm going to use. It does not matter when the coefficient of x squared is 1. It does not matter where you put the negative 6 and where you put the positive 3. So you're going to say x minus 6, x plus 3. All right, and that will be answered. Now before we go on, let's check this. Let's check the FOIL. X times x is x squared. The last, negative 6 times positive 3 is a negative 18, so that works. And the outer inner, so my outer is 3x, my inner is negative 6x. When I add them up, I get negative 3x, and that's what you wanted. All right, now don't forget about the sign. If the last sign's negative, let's talk about the signs. If the last sign's negative, that means these signs in here are different. One's negative, one's positive. And the larger of these, the larger product, outer and the inner, will take the middle sign. So see how 6x 6 times x is 6x, 3 times x is 3x, so I made 6x negative. So that meant that 6 had to be negative, 3 had to be positive. Alright, so let's look at, let's see. Okay, let's try this one. X squared minus 3xy minus 4y squared. So x squared minus 3xy minus 4y squared. Right, now again, this time you have two variables. It doesn't matter, we dealt with this before. The GCF is 1, so I'm going to go directly to two binomials. And so remember, we're going to use the idea of FOIL, and we're going to use product sum. Alright, so x times x, so think about what goes here. X times x, first times first. That's this one here. We're going to just this up first. X times x is x squared. Alright, now I want the product right here. I want these two terms here. I want to find two factors of negative 4y squared. So two factors that will give me 4y squared. Alright, so just when you think of the product, just do the coefficient of this first. So that's negative 4. So you want the product to be negative 4. And you want the sum to be this coefficient here. So negative 3. So we're going to think of two numbers whose product is negative 4 and whose sum is negative 3. So if you think about it, and remember this product's negative, so that means one's negative, one's positive. Obviously that's not going to work because the sum is 0. Alright, but what's going to work, if you think about it, is a negative 4 and a positive 1. Because negative 4 times 1 is a negative 4, and when I add them up, negative 4 plus 1 is a negative 3. Alright, so again, it does not matter where you put this, since the coefficient of x squared is 1. So I'm going to say x minus 4. Now don't be careful, just like in the last problem, kind of looks the same, except remember you have two variables, so you got to say negative 4y times x plus 1y. Now remember, don't put the 1 here, so this is going to be a 1. Alright, so let's check. X times x is x squared. The last, negative 4y times a positive y is a negative 4y squared. And the outer is a positive xy. X times y is xy. The inner is a negative 4xy. And when I add them up, I get a negative 3xy. So that's your answer. Alright, let's look at, let's see, let's do this one. Alright, you have x squared plus xy minus 2y squared. So x squared plus xy minus 2y squared. So again, you have two variables just like the previous one. The GCF here is 1, so I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. The factor is two binomials. We find two factors whose product is this. So let's use the FOIL, and we're going to use product sum as well. Okay, so I want two factors of x squared. So two terms, f times f, that will give me x squared. So you can say x times x. Alright, now the last sign's negative. Just remember, one sign's going to be positive, one sign's going to be negative. And remember, the outer and the inner combines to give us this positive. So the larger of these, the larger outer, the larger inner, will be positive. So the product I want to be this last term right here, the coefficient. So that's negative 2. Because remember, last times last is going to be negative 2, y squared. And then I want the sum to be the coefficient of this middle term, so that's going to be 1. So I've got to come up with two numbers whose product is negative 2 and whose sum is 1. So remember, since it's negative, the product, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. And since I want the sum to be positive, that means 2 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative, because when you think about it, a positive 2 and a negative 1 is a positive 1. Alright, so I found my numbers. That's going to go here. So you can say x plus 2y times x minus y. Alright, so minus 1y or just y. always check yourself. X times x is x squared, so that takes care of that. The L, negative 2y times a negative y is a negative 2y squared. And the outer, x times a negative y is a negative xy. The inner, 2y times x is a 2xy. And when I add them up, combine my terms, I get xy, which is what I wanted. Right, so that's the answer for that one. All right, let's look at the let's see. All right, so I'm trying to find one. All right, so let's look at this one. All right, so you're going to have x cubed minus 2x squared minus 24x. So x cubed minus 2x squared minus 24x. So again, you got to look for GCF first. GCF is x, so I can factor out an x. So I get x times x squared minus 2x minus 24. All right, so now what I want to do is try and factor this trinomial. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it here. X squared minus 2x minus 24. And then I need to factor these two binomials. And remember, we're going to use the idea of FOIL. And then product sum. All right, so again, we're working on this one right here. So x times x will give us x squared. So that takes care of that. Now the L, I want two numbers, last times last, whose product is negative 24. So I need the product to be negative 24. And when I add them up, the outer and the inner, I want that to be a negative 2x. So I need the sum to be negative 2. So we need to come up with two numbers whose product is negative 4 and whose sum is negative 2. So if you try, let's say 6 times 4, remember we want it to be negative, so let's say negative 6. Negative 6 times 4 is negative 24, and when I add them up, I do get negative 2. So that's going to go here, negative 6 and positive 4. Now remember, that's not the answer, because that's what you get when you factor this. So you got to bring it here. So the answer is x times x minus 6 times x plus 4. And that's your answer. All right, so that's going to conclude this video.